Stopping College Audition, a podcast where we explore the landscape of the college theater world and try to demystify this daunting audition process. I'm your host, Charlie Murphy, director of MTCA, that's Musical Theater College Auditions, and today we've got a kooky and collaborative show lined up for you. This is our first dual guest episode with the wonderful Will Reynolds, who's of course an old friend and MTCA coach / music supervisor, and Hannah Corneau, who is a delightful new friend. Today on the show, we talk a little bit about how Hannah and Will ended up at Syracuse and Carnegie Mellon, respectively. We give some advice for parents calling their actor children. We try to talk about kind of breaking out of the fixed mindset about programs and careers. We talk about Will's songwriting process and blending his performing and songwriting skills, best practices with collaboration and feedback between the composer and the singer. We talk a lot about collaboration. You're going to hear that word a lot. We talk about finding openness in the rehearsal process and working with scene partners. And we play our first live action collaborative game with a little mind meld. If any of you played mind meld out there, it goes pretty well, surprisingly well. And we wrap with a little bit of social media diet, talking about creating versus consuming. I do regret not getting deeper into some of this good Wicked stuff, which Hannah was an Elphaba in Wicked. We did touch on it a bit, but I had a bunch of unasked questions about that particular show. There's only so much time, you know, you prepare so much and you only get so much actually in there, but I do think it's a really fun episode. I love both of their energies. And of course I knew Will already, but getting to see Hannah like that was really fun. Speaking of fun, it is vacation time for your favorite podcast host. I have not taken a true vacation, sort of non-working vacation over the summer. I know I took a little time off from the podcast, but still a lot of work. But I have not done a real vacation since Solvi was born, and Elizabeth and I are going to spend a few days in Colorado. You know, it's between work for her, so it's sort of a half-working vacation for her, but we're going to get a couple days where we're going to truly try to unplug, if at all humanly possible. So if anything earth-shattering happens between recording this on a Saturday and when this airs on Wednesday, you're going to have to wait until next week for me to address it. You know, whether it's the Queen's resurrection or whatever happens in the news, I'm not going to catch it in time. But let's dive into this really fun episode with Will Reynolds and Hannah Corneau. All right, well, we are honored and excited to have Will Reynolds and Hannah Corneau on the pod today. I'm going to do two bios back to back. We'll see how I do here. Hannah has a BFA from Syracuse University. She made her Broadway debut in Wicked as Elphaba, and she's on off-Broadway shows like Daddy Long Legs, potentially sharing that show with our own Will Reynolds. She's also with Will appearing in the upcoming Radioactive, that's by Will Reynolds and Eric Price, and she has her own personal fashion line called The Rose House, which we may talk about a bit today. Will has a BFA from Carnegie Mellon University. He's an actor, he's a writer, he's a teaching artist. He's done shows like The Same Daddy Longlegs, Passion, The Illusion, and as a writer, he's written music for The Violet Hour, Radioactive, Around the World, The Sixth Borough, and currently the Apple TV Plus show Central Park, all with Eric Price, as well as the theme music for this very podcast, without needing Eric to supply the ba-ba-bas. Those came from my daughter. She did those. Will is also a longtime amazing MTCA song coach and our music supervisor, and also the founder of This MT Space, which is a musical theater songwriting program for people who are looking to get into it. Will, Hannah, welcome on the pod. Do you feel honored to be our first duo?
Yes.
Deep honor.
Deep honor. Good. I said honored and excited, and I was going to leave it up to you of who was an honor and who was excitement. You can we'll keep that a mystery, you know?
We can keep it a mystery, but I think
Yeah, that's fine.
I'm excited.
That's excited. You're 100% right. That's right.
I'll go with
Well, he's
honor.
on Apple TV Plus. That's the honor, you know?
Yes.
I'm so excited for the second half of the show. We're going to talk a lot about collaboration with the two of you. But I also do, because you went to the wonderful Syracuse University, and we have not yet had a student. We had Tom Miller from Syracuse on the pod. We haven't yet had a student had that experience. So I'm going to really focus the first half a little bit more on you, Hannah. And Will, since we've had an overabundance of Carnegie Mellon content.
Sure.
You're going to bob and weave. I'm going to throw some to you. I'm going to not some to you. When you have interesting things to say, if you want to supply accompaniment in the background, you know, we'll let you do all of this. But this one really can be for both of you. I'll start this with Hannah, which is just to take me back a little bit to when you were 16, 17, maybe starting to think about doing all this. Like, what were you looking for in a program? If you had like a mission statement of like, I'm hoping for a program that is like X, what was that X for you?
Absolutely. That's such a good question. And I also just love your spirit.
Oh, thank you. We start with a compliment. We love.
Listen, we do. We do. I'm looking for a program, and it was so beautifully evident right away with Syracuse. I'm looking for a program that allows me to feel myself in, and I'm looking for a program that honors curiosity, which is certainly what Syracuse did. It was like Syracuse is a program that is known for cultivating authenticity out of their artists. And I think that's a testament to their faculty. It's just like such a range of people who have like different backgrounds and training. And so it's like a cool artist colony in upstate New York vibe, that has deep integrity, but not rigidity. At least that's what I felt.
And what was like the scope of your search? Like, were you looking at all musical theater programs? Were you looking at a whole bunch of them? Did you only look at a couple?
Absolutely. Great question as well. I did apply to Ithaca for vocal performance.
You want that upstate New York haven. That's what you're going for. You had that specific dream.
And my Jewish mother had that specific dream as well, because I'm from upstate New York.
Fear not. We'll get into the Jewish mother.
Fear not. They're coming. So I was from upstate New York, and so of course, and it was lucky. We had just amazing programs up there as well. But so I applied actually to Ithaca for their BFA musical theater program and their vocal performance program. Did not get in for musical theater, but did vocal performance. And then it was kind of for the rest of my schools that I applied to Boston Conservatory, Carnegie Mellon, Emerson, Hart School of Music. But like I didn't do Michigan, and I did not do CCM, which was once I got to school and you found out more about others' journeys, I was like, wait, I did not apply to those two. That's kind of odd. But I mean, my journey was so meant to lead me to Syracuse. But yeah, it was down to the wire there, just to hone in on your question. It was down to the vocal performance program at Ithaca and the BFA program for musical theater at Syracuse. And ultimately, I knew that I really, really wanted to focus on storytelling and like the larger world of artistry. So.
I love it. All right, Will, I will ask you the same question, though you're not going to get many of these questions. But
that's fine.
When you were arriving at this 15, 16, 17, starting to think about all this, what were you looking for in a program?
I had such a really I was sort of the opposite of what we do at MTCA in terms of our kind of philosophy around application and where to be looking and how kind of wide to spread your wings. I had such a fixed mindset. I applied to 4 schools, 2 for musical theater, 2 for classical music voice. And I was like, if I don't get into these schools, I'm not ready for this thing and I can't do this thing. I was like so hard on myself. And it was Carnegie Mellon, Cincinnati, CCM for musical theater, and then Northwestern and Juilliard for voice. And got waitlisted at Juilliard. I'm just going to hang that little thing.
It could still happen for you, buddy.
I'm just waiting.
I'm just waiting. Got in the other places, which was amazing. But really just told it was such a fixed mindset about like, it can only be these 4. If I don't get into these 4 at the highest level, what I had been told was like the highest level, then what do you do? You must reconsider your dreams. And, I think a lot of that had to do with like, just like information out there, this was,
this was like the early 80s back then, right?
Yeah, this is the early 80s, I mean, it was Carnegie Tech.
Yeah, Carnegie Tech, exactly.
Cincinnati was just wheat fields.
Yeah, you had to make it by horse carriage to take you to your audition.
Yeah. Oh yeah, right, exactly. No, it was, there was not, you were kind of I was going off of things I would see in the bios for the tours that came. I grew up in Chicago. The artists that I would see. Oh, they went to see Cincinnati. Oh, they went to Carnegie Mellon. Oh, Stephen Schwartz, who I was obsessed with the musical Pippin in high school. I'm like, Stephen Schwartz went to Carnegie Mellon, and he was in the theater program. Oh, you can. And I was also starting to write a little bit in high school, and I was like, well, that would be really cool, and to follow in that person's footsteps, that he could be in the theater program, could write musicals. The composer Ricky Ian Gordon went to the music school at Carnegie Mellon. So I very much was sort of like, who are they? Where'd they go? I'm going to apply there kind of a person. But yeah, it was a very, very fixed mindset that would not work these days at all. I don't think at all. I should have had so many other schools on my list. So I wish I had no coaching. I was just flying by the seat of my Midwestern pants.
Will Reynolds, I will tell you one fun fact, which is when I was visiting schools, when I was visiting Carnegie Mellon, I came and saw you. This is not to age everyone, to know where everyone's age is, but I came and saw you in a show. I believe it was Candide. Is that true? Did you do Candide?
My senior musical.
Your senior show. And I remember thinking, oh man, this is where it's at. This is that's where the talent is right there. I got to go here. Carnegie Mellon, my gosh. So there you go. I know
you're sure you saw my cast because we were double cast.
No, I did think there's someone who's better than you. That's probably what that was. It was probably someone else. Yeah, for sure.
It was the other guy, and his name was Will Reynolds, which is so weird. So it's like
that's crazy.
Whichever one you saw, they were
Equity has to fix it. Yeah. Well, let's get into Hannah's Jewish mother and all of our families.
Oh my God.
In terms of so now we're going into this field, and maybe not everyone is thrilled by that. Maybe people are thrilled by that. You know, as we talk about, I was just doing this yesterday. I was talking about this process with someone in general, and just talking about like how, you know, the college experience and the conservatory training experience don't always naturally go together. They don't always necessarily make sense of like, oh, right, I'm going to go to 4 years of college and 4 years of conservatory and how they work together. I would just love to hear, like, what was your relationship with your parents like? Were they all supportive of, yes, we totally get it, go for your dream? Or, you know, to Will's point, sometimes parents say, well, if you can't get into one of these three, then we know it's not meant to be and you should go to business school. You know, how was that like with your parents? We'll start with Hannah and then Will, you can tell me too.
Yes. So single mom, and bless her heart, she was supportive and made it work. Like really, really made it work. Filled out those FAFSA forms, like helped me, didn't kind of let me fly by the seat of my upstate New York pants. Because you said Midwestern pants, Will, I'm going to call it back. You know, so she let me kind of just do my thing as far as like coordinating auditions went. But, you know, bless her, she just figured it out financially for me and for her, to, you know, for which I was very grateful. And
but she was all, it's your dream, go for it. She wasn't, there was no.
Yeah. And yes, exactly, it was my dream. And also I had a lot of champions in high school. And I had positive reinforcement as far like by way of like getting the roles. And you know, I feel like there's indicators, right, that help parents find the faith.
Right. Someone says, hey, Hannah's really special.
Yeah.
She really should go into
and I luckily had some beautiful champions that allowed my mom to breathe a little bit easier in her encouragement to go along this path. But you know, it was a struggle, and like I would financially, it was a struggle, and you know, and of course she's still my mom, and so she's still like, what's going on with that audition? You know what I mean? It like never goes away. It's all, there's always going to be that like, how's it go? And because it's the life of like an artist, a freelance artist, you know, unless you're, you know, in a very long running show and you want to stay there for a while, you know, it's like, unless there's a very specific circumstance that happens, you're an artist who is an artist and live in that life of uncertainty. And so bless the parents who encourage it, you know, but it's also important to have those champions that are indicators to us.
My own Jewish mother will often would ask, hey, did you book that HBO show? And I'll be like, yeah, Mom, I booked it secretly and didn't tell you. That's right. I would not have called you to tell you. I was waiting for you to call and check in. And then I was going to tell you that I booked it.
Charlie, that is the conversation that I have had for, what is it, 60 years now, right? Yeah,
60 years since the late 30s.
This podcast is going to make people go and look up my picture online and realize how wrong
he's got gray hair. He has. I'm looking at gray hair.
Oh my God.
Salt and pepper at the very
least.
Let's
call it silver.
Silver fox,
tongue,
baby.
Silver voice, silver fox. All right. What about your parents, Will? What was the experience from those Midwestern pants factories?
My parents were and are still incredibly supportive, and were absolutely the exact same mindset of, this is your dream. We're going to figure out how to make this happen. In a very similar vein, the finances were like not the thing that was going to be easy. And there were a lot of difficult conversations when it came to, okay, you could go here. And this is, you know, just really specifically between when it came down to the two musical theater programs, Cincinnati was a public school. Obviously, I wasn't from Ohio. I grew up in Illinois, but still the tuitions were wildly different. I had a very different scholarship things come in from the different schools, and it was just going to be a very different kind of sacrifice for my parents, who had already put my two older sisters through college, or were just finishing. One had already gone, and one was still in, and it was also very clear that I would have to work while I was there. And I had all kinds of jobs through college and all kinds of, either I worked at the box office at school. I was a waiter at some random restaurant in Squirrel Hill. And I had to also take out my own loans. It was all this sort of like team effort to make this happen. But yeah, I mean, there was also, I think for them, if I said to them, well, what else am I going to do, Mom? Like, I think they would be like, oh yeah, you can't really do anything else. So
you have no other skills.
Good at anything else. So it was sort of that. It's like, what else are you gonna? I mean, I don't know. There was really no. I had sort of joyfully pushed myself into a corner where like this was the only path. I was like a kid actor growing up in Chicago. Like it was just like this is the only thing I can see. Again, in a sort of like fixed mindset way, I have to say. Like looking back now, feeling like it's also there really weren't many voices being like what else could you be interested in? Like what else?
Or open up a little, Will.
Yeah. I mean, I was just, and still, just so hell bent on that vision. And I mean, I think that is that tenacity is what gets you through a career in the arts. And I think the ones, my friends who, when I think back to the folks who I graduated school with and was in school with, many are not still within the program the business
program.
And the industry,
you're saying the addiction that is.
Yeah,
right.
Program.
Exactly.
The larger program.
Yeah, right. And I think so much of that has to do with like work-life balance and that tenacity, and that and that's great, and when I see friends who pivot and shift, I'm so thrilled for them, that to see them thriving, and to also like taking off that sort of fixed mindset blinders of like, no, when I was 17, I committed to this, and it's like, yeah, you were also 17, and it's okay. Life, you also don't know what's coming down the line, so for my parents to at that point to trust the vision of a 16-year-old with a multi thousands of dollars decision is shows a lot of love and care, and I am eternally grateful to them.
I mean, I do think there's such an interesting conversation of like the mix of tenacity and openness that you need, right? You need to have the competitiveness with yourself, the fuel to, I'm going to keep going. But also, I'm going to give you a little bit of credit. Like, I don't know that you knew at 16 going to Carnegie Mellon's BFA musical theater program that you were going to become the exact multi-hyphenate artist that you've become, right? So in some ways, you've kept an openness of going, I'm still pursuing the thing tenaciously, but I have kept enough flexibility to go, well, look at this. Maybe I'm composing and acting. Maybe I'm writing. Maybe I'm
going to push against you there, Charlie, where I feel like because I had gone to Carnegie Mellon and I'd spent all this money, and I'd also seen, I was there when Leo and Telly were seniors, and Josh Gad and Rory O'Malley and Leslie Odom, and oh my God, everyone were juniors, and Meghan Hilty was a year ahead of me, and Patina Miller was a year below me. To watch these, these forces go into the industry and see what happened to them all very quickly, there was this sense of like, oh, this, I gotta make good on this commitment.
Meaning I shouldn't pursue this other interest. I shouldn't go to this writing because I need to go do acting. I got to go be successful.
Yeah. It's like, I have to make sure that this shows up in the way that in the thing that the way I saw it having to shape up when I was 17, and the way I saw others ushered into it. And, but no one's journey is ever the same. And, timing is everything. And, I think when you see, I always share this, that, when you see those folks who have very quick success out of school, and we all think that, oh, that's, if you don't have that, if that doesn't happen to you, then it's, then like, good luck. But it's so much of these careers it's like, that season wasn't your season, and this maybe next year is, or maybe in 10 years, once you've done X, Y, and Z, you're now prepared for W, and we just so it's, again, and that's part of that tenacity too. But I would have pursued the writing probably a little more boldly professionally coming out of school if I didn't have that sort of that fixed mindset thought of like, no, I have to run the acting path at all the way down the field before I can pick up the other thing. And it wasn't exactly that. I was still doing both at once, but I absolutely could have freed that up a bit for sure. Hindsight's 2020.
I love that. Well, and talk about growth, right? It is growth that you, from the I can only be one of these 4 schools or it's not happening to
Yes,
discovering a different path. Look at you, maturing with your wizened, aged hair and your aged mindset. It's fantastic. Hannah, let's do a little bit of Syracuse. So now you do end up getting into Ithaca and Syracuse. You're going upstate New York no matter what. You choose Syracuse. Tell us a little bit of what was that experience like for you? You know, in a few words, you talked about kind of the authenticity that they go for, but tell me a little bit about what the experience of those 4 years were.
Yeah, the experience of those 4 years were, I think, for me, about finding community, because I did find lifelong friends and lifelong collaborators, who I'm working with to this day, and hope to work with forevermore. So that's amazing. So
Hannah, you don't have to drop the episode title in your answer. It was fantastic, but it was, I'm just saying, it's a little bit much. The collaboration. We're going to get to it, I promise.
Just hitting that nail right on the head, everybody.
Collaborator.
But the thing is, though, Will and I did not go to school together. We were just like real world blessings that, oh my God. I mean, the spark that I feel with Will is totally the spark that I felt with my people from Syracuse. But Syracuse was also a lesson for me in like trust. Like, we were not cast in any main stages until our sophomore year. Now, I did my freshman year. We did our little crew assignments. I was sound for Equus, which honestly was phenomenal. I loved it. And then sophomore year came, and then junior year came, and I was cast for the first time my second semester of junior year, and then I was Sally Bowles the first semester of my senior year. And so it was like, and if you look, if our class were to look back at like the shows that were done during our time there, if we were to look back at that season and those shows, Sally in Cabaret was the role to play for the girls in our 4 years. And it was, so like I said, it was a lesson in patience. Totally. And like just trusting in, like Will, you were saying, your specific journeys, no one journey is like another. So, yeah. And I also graduated school early. I had some really inspiring friends who kind of were uniquely aspirational and inspired me. And so I was able to play Sally Bowles, and then
And you left,
I left
before you finished senior year.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, I also really love, Will joked about the program, right? But like, I've had that experience many times when you're like, when programs do share a mindset, sometimes it is like finding a long lost cousin. You go, oh, like it's what it is to be trained. Sometimes you're like, oh, we speak the same language. Like, oh, I get it. Like I move and you move without, I didn't even have to talk about that. Oh, that just worked in a way that like, often if you don't have that kind of training, and it is very similar training, those are 2 programs that I think share a lot of kindred spirits to it.
Yeah.
That you might not necessarily all, move as easily. It's like, I always make sports analogies. It's like people who know how to play basketball, you can just throw the ball out there and they know they're going to cut at the right time and they're going to pass. And I'm like, you see that on stage when we go, this person just gets it. I made this, and then they come back with this, and you go, yeah, cool. We're speaking the same language.
Yeah, totally.
Hannah, I need that bootleg. Where's the bootleg?
Yeah, we need that Sally Bowles. We'll put it in the show notes. Put it on YouTube.
Right, exactly.
We'll put it in the show notes.
We honestly do need it on YouTube. All right.
As a slime tutorial, I'm sure it's out there.
Yeah, slime tutorial.
My last school question for you is just, and this is for both of you, if you could go back and now teach a class at your school, or add a class, and maybe you're not the one to teach it, but if you go, I wish this class had existed for us, and I'm going to give you the rule, it cannot be a business of the business class. That's what everyone says. But so give me a class that you go, I wish we'd had a little more of this. Now that I'm a professional, I love my training, probably. It sounds like both of you did. But what would I have wanted? I wish I'd gotten a little more of this specific kind of training.
Well, I will say, and it's one that I've actually had the joy to teach, 2 versions of, but the version of it that I think is sort of the most sparky, I'd say, is a sort of devised class where the performers have to create their own work, write their own work, and be working and just learn what it is to create new work, to inherit someone's words, to be in the process of in the room of something brand new. Because I feel like so much of, at least when I was at Carnegie Mellon, we do so much honoring of classic texts and just the text with a capital T. meaning like, and also like that's text that's sort of frozen in time and great, incredible work that is so nourishing and creatively full. But really not until, it was my senior year where they started a program called Playground, where a week is taken off. I believe it's in the fall, where you have to be, where you don't have class, but you have to be committed to a project. That then at the end of the week, there's sort of like a festival of work. And that was for me where a piece of mine that's now called The Greenwood Tree, which is a musical based about Shakespeare's sonnets, began there because I was given this opportunity and this room and to create that. But outside of that, I had really there was not much room for what is new work and who are you in new work and what is your responsibility in the room and what is your relationship with the writer, what is your relationship as the writer, and so to create a sort of, so I led this class several years in a row at Malloy Cap 21 with my collaborator Eric Price, this devised theater class where by the end of half a semester they would have written an original musical for their 15 people in their class. And I mean, the growth and the trauma and drama and the challenge and wins of that was just incredible to see, and to see them perform their own work on their feet, staged by us, was like just so inspiring. And so I think just more experiences like that for sure. I would love to teach and lead.
So cool. Hannah, same question.
Amen. Kind of along the lines of that, I feel like I would entitle the class Mindfulness Through Authentic Song Interpretation and Expression 101.
I am
long title.
I know, such a long title. Thank you for not falling asleep. But you know what? It would be like a class that just honors the human behind the performer. I feel like no one ever was like, hey, so just because you have these capabilities doesn't mean that it's not kind of hard, doesn't mean that you're not going to feel postured, and doesn't mean that you're not going to not want to do it one day. You know what I mean? Like, it's, no one said that. They were just like, oh my God, you can do this? Cool. Like, this is so fun. / like, you better work your butt off to be the best you can be at this. And it's like, you know what? We need classes, I think, where the teachers are like, let's do what, and I think we have movement classes. I think we have voice classes, like speech, voice, that kind of touch upon this. But I just wish it was more emphasized in the musical theater world. Like, let's just, before we start this empty performance class, let's just get in our bodies. Let's honor the humans that are about to be called upon to express this artistry. And then once we get comfortable enough through giving ourselves grace to get to a point of expression, now let's find how we authentically resonate with the text.
And just define that word postured for me. You said we feel postured. What does that mean for you?
This whole ideology was born so intensely out of my experience with Wicked, frankly. Because I walked out on that stage to sing Wizard and I, and I was like, oh my God, how am I going to sing this? Am I going to sing it like Stephanie J. Block? Am I going to sing it like Adina? Am I going to sing it like Jessica? And I had to be like, no, you're going to be kind to yourself, honey, because you've got 2.5 hours left, and you're going to sing it how you can sing it today. And rather than put on a posture and sing it how I think I should be singing it. Rather, I had to fully surrender to what Hannah Corneau could do that day and honor her and thank her for it. And so, now after that whole experience, when I teach students, I'm like, hey, let's just firstly get on the same page with each other, that I see you and you're a storyteller, and you're a human who's being called upon to storytell. So let's just honor that human first to get you at a good place, feeling safe to do so. And if you feel safe, you're not going to be postured, you're right. You may go in and out, but it's you'll try to be mindful and stay out of
so
that.
Posture for you vocally is trying to replicate a certain kind of sound, vocal choreography.
Control in placement, in tone, in acting as well. Just really control over the whole expression, right?
Which is something that runs over, I think, a lot of musical theater work. Is that the cast. I come to call it the cast recording version of it, where I'm like, oh, I'm hearing you try to sound like Adam Pascal or whatever. I'm trying to hear you sing whatever. That it's you're trying to replicate an emotional place that's really all being done in your voice, and so then it's kind of dead on the inside because you're just like, the emotion's right in my voice. I don't need to give you anything else.
Exactly.
Hannah's pointing right now to say exactly. So just,
I'm
and
pointing.
it's a audio medium, but just so you know, there's pointing, which is saying I agree with
I'm
you.
like, yes. It's absolutely. You completely reflected that beautifully back to me. It's exactly that, and we want to avoid that, right?
Well, we've begun this section with a compliment. We've ended this section with a compliment. Let's take a short break, and then on the back end, we're going to talk a lot about collaboration with Will and Hannah. All right, we are back with Will and Hannah, and we're going to talk a little bit about collaboration, as Hannah has already dropped a couple times the title of the show. I know you've worked together in kind of multiple contexts, and also what I'm really interested is both of you I know are kind of multi-hyphenate interdisciplinary artists, and you're used to wearing different hats. And I think I want to talk about collaboration in general, but maybe let's focus a bit on this experience with Radioactive, right? There's just this release, this amazing single, if that's what to call it. It's a video. I don't know what the world is now, but
It's
this
both.
amazing thing. It's both. It's a single and it's a double and it's a triple with Hannah singing some of Will's music. And Will, I'd love to kind of start with you with this kind of collaboration. As someone who comes from that BFA musical theater world, and as an actor and a singer yourself, who still is an actor and a singer, how has that influenced your collaboration now as a composer, both with Eric? We don't have the wonderful Eric Price on the show. We would have, but doing 3 people I thought was too much for me to handle.
Yes.
But with Eric, but then also with Hannah in terms of the interpretive singer. So what has that experience been like as you try to now work with something that you know how to do, but you're not doing that role at this moment?
Yeah. I mean, the crazy thing is that I am still doing that role. What's the greatest joy for me is that rather than my acting career, where, you know, we are sort of put into a lane in terms of what we are kind of allowed to do, what audiences will see us as, what creative teams will see us as. Gratefully, joyfully, a lot of that is changing right now, which is an amazing, exciting time to watch this industry grow and move through that in terms of the world of type and all those conversations. But even still, you know, there is an essence that you are carrying, that there are certain stories and rooms that essence is exactly built for, and there are some that you may never get into that room, that creative room, and that's just part of that's where your vehicle drives, you know. But as a writer, I can take myself down any road. I can be any vehicle. I can be a truck. I can be a car. I can be a bike. I can be a unicycle. I can be a train. I can be whatever. And that's just so, having carried both of these careers side by side, to have those days where I go in an audition and I'm doing that one thing that they seem to think I do. And then I get to go home and they decide how that went and if I get the thing or not. But then I get to go home and work over here and I get to be all the things. And I decide if it was a success, and I decide if it moves forward. So to have that empowerment, this sort of like yin yang of this career where there's half of it that is completely in my control, completely in my direction, where I am basically limitless, is incredibly freeing. Now, what that looks like on the actual professional, how does this move forward, the show, like that's a different conversation for sure. But you know, at the end of the day, an actor's job is to audition and then do a show. But like if your day to day is these auditions, and you're feeling, if you can be made to feel like, you know, your creativity and expression is being gate kept, well, then to have this second half of a creative life where there are no gatekeepers is an incredible joy. So all to say that my work as an actor, my training as an actor, is the only way I can write, because the only way I think about writing is through the lens of character and circumstance. So I'm so grateful to have the experiences on stage, the experiences in training, to bring me to where I am, where I can actually create as well.
And how does one learn to like compose for people who do different things vocally than you do? Like I can kind of imagine like writing things. I was like, oh, I could kind of do this, or even being like, it's a different key than me. But like, especially like, I think Hannah, whereas we're going to see, does things vocally that you don't do. Like that you go, her voice does things that I don't do. But so how are you imagining that, or is that a collaborative process? Is that something where you go, I just know Hannah's voice enough, or female voices enough that could do certain things like this, that I can write that and imagine that? Or how does that happen for you?
I love that question. I've actually really not been asked that before.
We're unique here on the pod. You know, we have great questions.
It's a damn good question.
Yeah. I have to say it is that sense of when I am putting on that character, and I'm sitting here, I always I do write for me. I write for I think vocally always first. I always think melody, vocal first. Would I like singing this? Would this be fun to do? I've done too many things as an actor where it's like in a new work where I'm like, do I have to try to pull this off for you? Like, please, so I'm very sensitive to what I think is functional on the stage or in a song. But in terms of the voice type, gosh, I mean, I feel like it is so much, it's just where the character, it's just, it's where I wind up hearing them, and so so Marie Curie, like I was very clear that she would have this steely sound. It was very clear like what the range would sort of want to be, the kinds of sounds that I think she would be emotionally attracted to, what that would that would manifest in in her voice musically, started to become very, very clear to me. And it's funny because there were actually some early writing on the show where she sounded way too like princessy, like she sounded way too much like that sort of, that contemporary musical theater,
Frozen. You can
higher
say
mixed
Frozen. I know what you mean.
Frozen-y kind of thing. And it wasn't until sort of like a few years into the process where I was like, well, what if we just brought everything down, first of all, and then her real vocal vocabulary really started to show up for me. But it's iterative. It takes process. It takes a bunch of songs that don't wind up in the show for you to realize, oh, that wasn't her voice at all. But that got me to this voice.
And
but
do you hear a specific voice? Do you hear Hannah's voice as you're writing Marie Curie and going, this could work for, or if it's not specifically Hannah, but do you hear someone's voice that that goes, I know a voice that could do this?
Well, I'll share a little tidbit. This is not
Hannah's
name dropping.
Intently to see.
This is not name dropping, but
that's like saying this is not racist. When you say this is not name dropping, we know you're about to name drop. Let's be honest.
Yeah. Well, here we go. So so in our exploration of what is the voice of Marie Curie, while we were creating demos and writing, we had the incredible fortune to have a really, really remarkable array of women come in and record some demos. So we had Kate Baldwin and Laura Osnes and Abby Mueller, and then Hannah Corneau,
and then the step up to Hannah Corneau, exactly.
And Aaron Mackey, Hannah Ellis. And I feel like I'm really Beth Malone.
Beth Malone, who we're interviewing on Monday for this very pod.
Oh my God, Beth Malone. So we wanted to hear as many sounds as possible on this material, but when we were writing Getting Closer, Hannah and I were in the trenches with Daddy Longlegs, and it was instantaneously clear that this was a singular voice, and a voice that I must get into my world, because I heard it. I was listening to it every day. We would rehearse together. I would see her go on, and I was just really mesmerized by her sound and her approach and her artistry, just everything. It was like, Hannah, like what you said about I guess about me, when you're saying, when you met me, that it felt like your collaborations with, those kind of foundational friendships and artists who are now still, your friends and artists and collaborators from college. It was the same thing for me. It was like, this is a person who's like in my tribe and in my artistic hard
It's
drive.
so nice that Will gives compliments to himself through Hannah's voice. Previous compliments from before the pod.
Absolutely.
Very good.
I will,
But it was also
Hannah.
amazing compliments about me. I love you
only
so
fair, I know.
much. I love you.
Hannah, let me ask you kind of the reverse side of the question of like, so as you're working on new work, and so it could be someone like Will where you have a really close relationship, but it could be someone that you're a composer that's new to you and you may be friendly, but that you don't have quite the same relationship. Yeah. How do you find yourself giving feedback? Like, if you imagine that you heard Will's princessy sound and you're like, I can do that, but I feel like maybe it would sound a little better a couple notes lower. Or I feel like actually what might sound better in my voice if I'm playing this role is X. How do you do that? Maybe if it is different with Will than you do with someone else, I'd love to hear that. But just how do you find yourself going about giving that kind of feedback as the interpretive artist?
I'm going to disappoint you with this answer, but I don't give a lot of feedback. I just do what I'm told. I mean, sometimes I give feedback. Sometimes I do, but luckily I've been blessed with, opportunities that I haven't really felt like I really, really have needed to. I'm thinking about Radioactive. I'm thinking about Renaissance, which was the show I did off Broadway, and I originated a role there and worked with Carmel Deem. This was her compositional debut for her, and I hadn't really known her. And bless her and her artistry. I didn't really have to give a lot of feedback. I find when I'm working on new material, I just want to present the creators with what they created. Like,
you're just showing them what's on the page.
Yes.
My voice can replicate what's on the page,
kind
and that's
of
my only job.
And frankly, if we're talking about training and prepping for like the industry, like that is what I pride myself in. I pride myself in my technique and how it has my back, and how it it enables me to give these creators a clear picture to then be able to change, or to then be able to morph. But I don't know. I just, sometimes I do speak up, but I do it sparingly. And usually it's not about the creation itself when I'm called in to be the actor, which, like I said, may disappoint you, because, like I was in a workshop recently with Alicia Umphris, and like she really inspired me by how she gave feedback to the creative team, and I learned from her. I was like, okay, cool. Like that was.
It also really depends on where they are in the process, right?
Totally.
It's one thing to be on a 29-hour reading or a table read,
yeah,
and then to be in previews where you've been, it's you have to really be aware of where the piece is in its gestation.
Yes.
There's the right time for that kind of feedback, and when it really is, I mean, and to hear you say that, Hannah, that so much of the job is to serve what is there. It's the only way the writers can hear it clearly, because we are trusting, we the writer are trusting the performer to do their incredible work interpretively, but then there's also that trust that you trust us that we will hear what you've done and reflect back. Oh, we've got to change that, without even the need for necessarily like direct feedback. The feedback is in your like exquisite interpretation of what's there.
Well, love you for saying that. Thanks. I appreciate that. And I agree. I totally agree.
What if have you ever had a moment where there was like a vocal limit, that someone wrote something that you went, not that you couldn't do it, but that you go, I don't know that I'll try it, but it feels like I wish this vowel were a little different. I could do a lot better on an ah than an ooh here.
Yeah.
Is there anything like
We're on
that?
the vocal limits with Hannah Corneau.
There,
oh my gosh,
listen, I'm a Libra who's a perfectionist and wouldn't let myself be anything less than. No, the demons in my head are real that make my vocals rigid. But yes, there was a moment in Renaissance with Carmel Dean. I was like, hey, love it, this key, but I think I may need it a step lower. We tried it a step lower. We decided we liked it higher, and I ended up doing it higher. But there was a moment. Yes, I think there's great power in knowing that we have agency as artists, right? So I think feedback is so important, and I love that you're asking this question, because I think we need to normalize artists speaking up and advocating and voicing and collaborating. I really, really do. And so I think there's a time and a place. But sometimes.
But I've also seen like on a 29-hour reading, like a first, the very first industry facing presentation of a new work, and on day one, an actor's like, so listen, so on page 3, like, and
exactly.
in the weeds already, and it's like, whoa, like, we will talk about this absolutely on, if we end on Friday, we're going to talk about this on Saturday, but right now we are kind of frozen unless something happens on our side to like change it for you, but we can't. Every 5 seconds can't be the conversation from your side of the music stand, just because we have to get it done, but B, we have to hear it how it is, because it could be anything. We could go in any direction. At some point, we are trusting you to serve what's here, and then also trust us that we are hearing it. But and it's hard, because we never want, as my performer hat, we never want that egg on our face. We don't want to do the thing that like feels awful, and gosh, how many new shows where it's just like, oh god, this moment they got
totally, but we do at the end of the day have agency as actors to not even make a thing of it, but rather interpret it the way we want to, and if they don't respond to it, then we change, and then we can advocate. But we don't even need to be like, hey, on page 3, once we get to page 3 as the artist, we'll just interpret it the way we feel like comfortable doing it, and then go from there, right? I mean, at least that's kind of how I do it.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
I'm fascinated by this question, especially with new work, and especially, I'm going to say, with new work in an environment that I think I think Broadway especially, but really the theater in general, is trying to be more open and more collaborative in the way that they work. And so with news stories, as opposed to, hey, this story's already written and we know who sings what and all those things, it's really interesting. It feels to me the more that it opens up, and where the kind of blurry line comes between of like what my character would do, which is like, I think my character would sing a little more. I think I might have another joke in here, whatever. That you sometimes the feedback becomes what is going to give me a better moment, or going to give me, I've seen some of that in the Broadway world where it's like, oh, and all of a sudden that ensemble role is turned into a
Yes.
supporting actor
Yes.
role because of the feedback I gave during the workshop, or the way that I interpreted during the workshop. And it's that interesting. We talk about collaboration and competition, which the way those two things can meld to each other. I'm fascinated by that in terms of, they're definitely, you will see as actors who are working, I'm going to say with integrity and honestly just trying to interpret what's on the page, sometimes watch other actors steal some spotlight, and then actually all of a sudden their part's shrinking and the other part's growing, and they go, how did that happen? And I guess I wonder what that experience is like for both of you as actors, if you've had that experience in the room.
Collaboration has nothing to do with competition. If competition is anywhere near the ideology of collaboration, you're doing it wrong. Because it's just, there's such beauty that can come out of collaboration. And frankly, I think the competition is mostly unhealthy.
We'll get in there. What were you going to say?
Yeah, I mean, it's just such a dance, it really is a dance between both sides of the table. And, we're on this leading edge, this like threshold area where like it is completely unknown, and we're making it up together. And we have to throw the ball back and forth and trust, as I said earlier, we have to trust that the interpreters are going to do their best work for the highest good of the best idea in the room, and that the writers will throw that ball right back for the highest good, for the best idea in the room, and that we're all on the same page, and literally, and we all want the best looking, sounding, feeling thing. But we're also like at the exact same time stumbling in the dark, and we're also all like humans, and we're all like vulnerable. And some of us didn't get a lot of sleep the night before, and some of us have a cold today. Like, we're also different day to day. That how someone comes in after a lunch break is totally different than how they would have been had you done that scene in the morning. And so there's a real like dance around like how to get new material on its feet. And I think like as long as everyone just trusts that everyone in that room is there for its highest good, the work will get done. And it's actually okay to have moments of conflict, and that's totally fine. And to explore that boundary. And if you have that red hot burning idea and something that your process will be stymied if you do not express it, well, you have to express it, and trust that you're in front of people who will catch that and respond accordingly. But then you also have to sometimes check that and be like, is this for me? Or is this for something else? Am I actually working through some other process that was unfinished that now I feel like in this process I have to like revise? Or am I actually having this moment of whatever friction I'm feeling in my work, either on either side of the table, because it's what's happening right now. We do kind of carry, previous experience of how it went with a writer, how it went with an actor on a new show with us on our back as we go into the next thing. And it's hard to treat each new experience as a fresh, brand new experience. I've seen that a lot as well, where it's like this expectation of how the writer will be, or this expectation of how that diva or whatever will be, and that's so not the case, very rarely.
I love that phrase, the highest good. I think that is such a helpful way to think of it. And I think really tricky when you're like right out of school. If the objective in the room is to achieve the highest good, but we know secretly your objective might be, I really want to work with Will Reynolds again. I really think I want to make an impression on Will Reynolds that I'm a great actor, even that I'm an actor who's working toward the highest good, right? So it's not necessarily that I want something selfish, but it's easy to be in that room. And we've all seen that happen where you go, but really what I'm looking for is the next step in my career. Because of course that's the super objective in your life, but to be able to focus on the objective that we all have in this room, how do I serve that highest good, is actually what will give you that thing.
Yes. You'll get to the super objective if you just focus on the work.
Yep.
That's what it is. You get to that super objective. You work with the heroes when you just work diligently.
What about, I'm going to ask a difficult question for both of you as actors, because I had a high school student ask this to me recently, and I thought it was such an excellent question. I gave the compliment that you're giving me of excellent questions. She said, what do I do if the person I'm working with, the other actor, my fellow actor, isn't giving me what I need in this moment. So like there's this old Barbara Mackenzie Wood adage, which is like, you can't ouch more than your pinch. That's one of our professors, right? You can't react more than the pinch is, right?
You just ouched and pinched me at the same time.
Right. So what do you do if your scene partner isn't pinching you, right? Because she was saying like she was working with an actor who just like wasn't doing the thing. She needed to have a reaction that she could not organically, authentically have based on what she was getting from her scene partner. At that moment, somebody has to step in and give feedback. How would you experience that? Or what feedback would you give or not give to that actor through the director? How would you imagine that going if you're like, this obviously isn't working for what needs to happen for that highest good?
I mean, I think the statement, I'm not getting what I need from X, is a rough way to go through the world as a human, first of all. I mean, I think so much of our work as artists is such a reflection of just like what it is to be just a human on this earth, and the idea that some external is going to make you okay or make you good or get you to where you need to be is so limiting. And again, it's that fixed mindset, right? That if that set piece isn't where it needs to be, if that prop isn't exactly there, if that actor doesn't provide that line reading in this way, then I can't. What a box you've built around yourself of impossibilities, whereas like, I'm not getting this. Great. What am I getting? To turn it into, find the yes and mine for the yes in those situations and conversations, then this world of expectation of how it's supposed to be. Because guess what? It's not showing up that way.
Mm-hmm.
That is so powerful, and amen to that all. Like, okay, so I'm not getting this. So, but what am I getting? And maybe could you add? This is a question like for y'all. Like, could we add like, well, and how can I get what I want? And how can I cultivate it? Is that, I mean, I also think about that because like, yes, like I've had this situation where like, and I'm glad you said like, how can I get what I need? Maybe like through the director, because there has been that moment when like I am thinking very linearly and I'm just like, what the fuck? Like I need to be like crying and really experiencing this moment. And like, I am just being fed something so, in my opinion, an expectation, which I'm glad you said that word, Will, so different right now than what I'm hoping and wanting. And I had to just, after I spoke to the director and they were the liaison and it still wasn't changing, then yeah, I had to absolutely bring it to, well, what am I getting that's going to help me achieve this?
It's so smart. And I think it does speak to what you're saying about also trust of what the right role is, right? Trusting the composer will hear what is happening if you play what's on the page. If you organically and authentically react to what's happening in the moment, if the director is worth their salt and it's not working for the scene, that's the job to step in, is so that you don't have to say, hey, I need you to slap me in this moment, or I need you to whatever.
Yeah, because if it's physical outcome, if it's like, they're not getting me to cross the room, they're not getting me to grab them. It's like, these things are so work outable, and like that's stuff that to me, your director will literally see, right? There will be a moment where like, well, I'm not crossing there now, and the people who are responsible for the movement on stage will be like, well, I got to get them over there, And so trusting that if in the story it says she cries and you aren't getting whatever it is to feed into that moment for that to show up in whatever way it needs to for you, the director, writer, everyone on the outside is like, we got to get her. We have to serve and get her there because it's not happening right now. So just trusting again. And again, where are you in the process? If it's a 29-hour reading, you got to shake and bake a lot of stuff for yourself. If you're in rehearsal, you have to trust that you're in a process, right? That it's Monday. See how that is on Wednesday. If you're in it's when you're in a run, when you're in a run, you have the amazing tool of the stage manager who remembers how it's supposed to be, and it's their job to maintain how it's supposed to be. And that really becomes a very sort of, kind of just it's part of just the craft of what it is to run a show. And so I think there's always these people, these other roles who have the exact same intention as you and want to get you there. And it just depends on where you are in the process. And I think so much of that is just wanting that thing too soon and not letting it be an organic process, and just trust that like you're on a journey, and it's like, maybe it didn't happen today. Oh, well.
Well, and coming back to that rigidity of it's only these 4 schools or whatever, that if you're in that place of going, if you don't do this, I can't do this. If you're coming with that attitude, you'll make it true, as opposed to leaving open the possibility that, what actually is in front of me might lead to a really interesting place. And if not, then you do trust, yes, the stage manager or the director. Someone's going to come in and go, all right, let's adjust this moment. That pause is becoming 10 seconds and it's not really working for the show anymore, right? But that if you're going to react to whatever happens in that pause that your scene partner's taking as truthfully, and then maybe something even better could come, as opposed to it's wrong, it's different, therefore I can't, is not necessarily a really helpful place.
Oh yeah, and it's the same conversation with the idea that is not real of writer's block. This idea that we're blocked and there's a thing in front of us that is outside of us, and it's this thing and it's blocking us. And it's like, well, great, you've just given so much power to something that doesn't exist, that isn't in the room, that isn't there. And like the times where Eric and I in our process have felt backed into a corner creatively where we can't see our way through it. I always trust in my collaboration and with the people who are in the room doing this together. There's a higher, that hive mind thing is very real, and that the answer is in the room, and it is in the collaboration, and I don't have to be responsible for all of it. And if you are working on your own, you are still collaborating. You're collaborating with your past, with the people in your life. You are still a collaborative being, even though it feels like it's just you and your instrument or you and the piece of paper. You're still collaborating with your day. You're collaborating with what's literally right in front of you right now. So you're
setting up our game so beautifully in a second here, which we're going to play in a second here. But you're setting us up the past and the present. I'm not going to say any more, but it's very good. But I want 2 more questions about collaboration. Which, Hannah, this is for you because my assistant, who Will knows, also has worked for Will before, our wonderful Jordan Rice, was looking up something and wrote, Hannah made an iconic riff in No Good Deed. I have no idea exactly what that means, but apparently it's an iconic riff that you did. So I want to talk a little bit about that, like interpretive, like what it is to, when would you maybe change a rhythm or add a riff or even play with a melody a little bit when you're given a song? Like when do you take that freedom? Especially in a new musical versus, obviously Wicked is a longer running musical, et cetera. Like, I think of it as something I didn't realize. It took me so many commercial auditions before I realized, you can just make everything up. Like when you, a commercial audition, it is a suggestion. Like they really want you to write the thing better than they wrote it. Like this is out there. If you're ever doing a commercial audition, just be funnier than the text. Like I learned that eventually, that they're like, play with it. And eventually I was like, just improv. Like you want me to write this better than it was written. And then you'll use that in the commercial, even though you don't cast me. But like, there's that with a commercial audition. But for a play, if I was going in for an Itamar Moses play, I would do exactly what's on the page.
Yes.
I would interpret with a pause or something, but I'm not adding words or changing. When and where do you play and riff and change things just in terms of your own interpretation? And, I don't know all the best words of back singing or whatever you do, but when do you do that versus when do you feel like I'm singing exactly what's written to the dotted quarter on this page?
That's a great question. Like with Renaissance, like honestly, I sing oftentimes what's on the page. Sometimes like not to the dotted quarter. Sometimes I'm like, my phrasing is telling me this is different. But usually notes wise, I sing because like I'm not a vocal like yes, I can sing high and I have the tone I've been blessed with, like, yes, but like my agility is not like Jessica Vosk. And so like love your assistant for referencing my riff in Wicked, but like
iconic was written.
I'm obsessed with that. Honestly, I was hugely influenced by Vosk. Like I feel like she did something that really struck me. And in that show, of course we've had those like iconic women who have interpreted that music in such singular ways, right? But now it's really encouraged to just sing what's on the page, which kind of was a relief for me because like I said, like my vocal agility is like not as of Shoshana Beans. Like it's not that. It's not Vosk. I'm a different type of vocalist. But that riff was totally inspired, I think, by Jessica. I mean, but it sounds different because I'm just a way different vocalist, right? So, and I think I don't really know what he's referring to, but I think it's probably just the end. And I was just hugely inspired by her. Then I must have reinterpreted it based off of her genius, you know what I mean? And her inspiration within my spirit. But with Renaissance, I tried to sing what was on the page, but man, oh man, that was just like a playground of freedom, vocal freedom and like vocal gymnastics and just everything I love to do.
So you're just taking your own musical theater class of organically showing up as an artist. And then whatever interpretation happens is just putting on the clothing of this thing. But you're just wearing it as it is.
I'm wearing it as it is, babe. And I'm wearing it as I'm wearing it the only way that I can wear it.
Yep.
And frankly, that was really forwarded, that was really
And
instilled during Wicked, because that was the only thing
we
I
got
could
to
do.
shout out our own MTCA alum who's right now playing Elphaba on Broadway.
Talia?
Talia, what's up? Come on.
Talia, what's
Gotta do
up?
it.
Come on. Talk about an icon. My goodness.
Who I coached at MTCA.
Wow, and Will has to
Another
get
big
that
one.
in there too.
You
Not just
did?
MTCA, but a Will Reynolds MTCA.
Oh
No
my
big deal.
God.
NBD.
Let's lastly, before we play our game, I just want to talk a little bit about collaboration online, which of course we're doing right now, right? We're in this weird Zencaster three-way Zoom room. It's not Zoom, but as more and more of the people do this work online, how are we finding that that does happen? I don't know if with Radioactive, how much you did in the room versus online with COVID, but do you find yourself now trying to collaborate non-contemporaneously? So is there more recordings and sending voice memos and back and forth? Or do we still spend a lot of time on Zoom rooms, Zoom calls with each other? I guess I'd love to hear, what has that experience been in 2022 for all of you?
So with Eric Price, my amazing lyricist, who I've been collaborating for with nearly 15 years now, which is nuts. So much of our collaboration has been in a long distance format, either online, phone, email, all the things that can connect us in those ways. Zoom, of course. Just because of either I was in Brooklyn, he was uptown, I was on tour with Mamma Mia, he was in New York. I was, so much of our collaboration was around my
Carnegie
career.
Mellon tour.
Tour. And so we had to learn how to work long distance, because I often was, in the early days in our collaboration, wasn't around and in town. So he and I have really ironed that out, and so much of our work is sort of, we are on our own, and then we come together to fuse that solo work together and to move the ball, and then we kind of go away and we marinate and do our separate jobs and come back to again combine those elements. And so yeah, I mean, I am fine working this way. Of course, there was nothing ever like being in the room and being at the piano and whoever is in that room with me to make the thing. Like, there's nothing ever to second that. And ideas move differently in those spaces. And I think Eric and I, just over our time together and our trust of each other and our weird, I don't know, brain connection, that we can kind of get it done this way. But there was nothing like being in the room. And I know Hannah just is coming off of an experience, an intense in the room, collaborative experience, and it's there. So there's nothing like it. And that's that in the room where it happens of it all is very, very true.
Do you find yourself technologically developing shorthands of Google comments mean this versus this Dropbox, or how are you? Is it just you write your thing and send it to the other person, or do you have we
don't really use all the things that I guess are out there. I mean, it is voice memos for forever. I mean, we have hours and hours and hours and hours of voice memos back and forth of me demoing stuff, Eric reading his lyrics, Eric and I sending each other kind of monologues to each other via voice memo. But in terms of actual drafty things, gosh, I don't even know. Yeah, I mean, we definitely don't use comments in Google, or it's really just, it's just all conversation. It's so much in the conversation. And then if it's about getting something on the page, Eric is, in terms of text and script, he's the one putting it there. In terms of score, that's me. It's the trust that from our conversation, it's going to reflect what we discussed. And then if it's his work, if it's dialogue and scene and that stuff, that work, it'll come to me and I'll read it, and then we'll talk again and wrestle it out. And sometimes it will be a screen share, and he's he is in the script, and I'm with him. I mean, again, so much of my work with him is to be all the roles and be the actor, and just giving him. I am sort of just the canary in the coal mine of our shows. I'm I don't know why, but it's this. I can't. And he's so much. He is gratefully to me so much more of the logic and the and the craft and the architecture, as well as just an outstanding use and of the English language and just gift there. But we really do complement each other in terms of sort of what energies we lead with. So I can always trust that there's a solution in structure from him, and there's a solution in kind of chaos and mess from me in a great way. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think it is time to play our game. Have either of you guys played the game Mind Meld before?
No, but
do you know the
I feel
game
it's
Mind
my
Meld?
life.
Well, we're going to learn it together.
I'm scared.
It's terrifying. This is a very simple like warm-up game, something I sometimes do with acting classes to like get us all in the room, right? The listeners can play along at home.
Fun.
So you're going to start off and both of you are going to think of a completely random word. And then we're going to say it at the same time, just a completely random word, right? Then the challenge is you're going to both try to come up with what is in the exact center of those two words. So what's right in the middle of them? Could be metaphorically in the middle, logically in the middle, however your brain thinks. There's no right way to do it. You just can't repeat a word that's already been said. But whatever direction you think of, right? If something word association, if it works, you can go to the left, to the right, however you want to do it, right? We're not going to think too long. We're going to look deep into each other's eyes and see how quickly we can mind meld. If we do it really well, we may play a couple rounds of the game. If we do really poorly, we may play just the one round until we mind meld.
Great.
We're about to play Mapping the College Audition Mind Meld for the very first time.
We say the same word the first time, I'm just going to...
You better not like chat it to each other. I'll be very angry. All right, ready? 3, 2, 1.
Lipstick.
Cinnamon.
I heard lipstick and I heard cinnamon. And now what's in the center between lipstick and cinnamon? You're both going to say it at the same time. Make sense? 3, 2, 1.
Martha
Julia
Stewart.
Child.
Now those words are gone. We have Martha Stewart and we have Julia Child. What's directly in the center of Martha Stewart and Julia Child? Do you both have a word? 3, 2, 1.
Living.
Living and apron. Okay. What is in the center of living and apron? 3, 2, 1.
Mother.
Heart and mother. That's very close. We're getting very close. 3, 2, 1.
Family.
Child.
Child and family. Ooh, are we close? Ooh, are we close? Okay. 3, 2, 1.
Home.
Care.
What's right in the middle between home and care? 3, 2, 1.
Trust.
Essential oils.
Did you say something, Will?
I said essential oils.
Essential oils. Okay. So we have trust and essential oils.
Oh,
I heard
okay.
trust
Okay.
and essential oils. Do we have one? Is a mind melt starting to somewhere in here? We got trust and essential oils. You both look excited. I don't believe you, but let's see what happens. 3, 2, 1.
Witch.
Yes!
We did not. We did not.
We have a mind melt. And we did it on the witch of Elpha coming all the way back.
We looked at each other. We were like,
We had it. We had it.
Dare we try to play again?
oh.
Can you beat 13? Can you beat 13 whatever times this time?
Oof.
I think you can. You now understand the game, yes?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, here we go. Round 2. We've gotten one already, a beautiful witch. All those rounds are gone. All those words are out of our minds. It is now just a new random word from anywhere in the universe.
Mm-hmm.
We got a word. It goes 3, 2, 1.
Radium.
Chair and radium. Chair and radium. Okay? 3, 2, 1.
Marie.
Yay!
Because what was funny, I was like, oh, well, now I have to say Marie Curie. And I was like, oh, that's weird. But no,
I said it too.
No, you forced it. You forced it.
Fine.
You forced it. Okay,
We
we're going
forced
to do one more round. One more round. No forcing toward your own musical. I
No
know it's
forcing.
such a...
Yeah, thank you.
Oh my gosh, you're trying to do branding. I get it. Good for you.
I know.
Okay, it's fine. Radioactive, playing soon, and blah, 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 about Mercury. We'll do it.
Getting closer on Spotify.
Random word, nothing to do with our careers and our self.
Got it.
We talked about this.
Thank
our
you. Thank you.
Propagation or whatever.
Yep.
Okay. Random word from nowhere. 3, 2, 1.
Book.
Mountain.
Mountain and book. Great words. 3, 2, 1.
Monk.
Peace.
Monk and peace. Ooh, very close. We're very close. We're going 3, 2, 1.
Meditation.
Heaven, I was going to say.
You said nothing. You said
Heaven,
nothing.
heaven
You said
and-
nothing.
I did it.
Okay, so we've got meditation
Heaven
and nothing. What's in the middle of
my God,
meditation
gosh.
and nothing? Okay.
Everything.
I'm so sorry.
Everything. Well, careful. Don't cheat. Don't
Yep.
cheat. We got
I know.
meditation and nothing. Ready? 3, 2, 1.
Now.
Joy.
Now and joy. Okay, great
Oh.
words. Now is a great word.
Now.
3, 2, 1.
Collaboration.
Oh, you cheater! Yeah!
Oh.
Oh my God.
We will stop
was
there. That
fun.
was fantastic. Fantastic. Before I fully let you go, we've been doing a little bit of a runner on social media. So I just want to throw out, like, what is both of your wonderful relationships
Yes.
or terrible relationships with social media? I'll start with you, Hannah.
Yep.
How have you used it as a positive? Where have you found the negatives of it? Talk to us a little bit about your relationship there.
Totally. I think, social media, I'm wary about it because of the competitive nature to it, because I think competition is truly the antithesis of self-worth and joy and all of that. So I think social media is scary, but I also think social media is a beautiful and powerful tool and can be uplifting and can be used for connectivity, and it can be used to further your um, visual dreams and personal dreams too. It's a tool. It's a
Mm-hmm.
tool. Just protect yourself from it, right? I'm also too old for TikTok, so sorry about it, y'all. But I love you.
We just started a TikTok. No big
Cool.
deal. We're very proud of
Cool.
ourselves. How have you used it? So this fashion
Yeah.
outlet that you've started, how has it been something that you've successfully been able to use your social
Yeah.
media following to now parlay it into some fashion
For
stuff?
sure, for sure. The Rose House was born out of the pandemic, and it was basically like an online, like your favorite like online boutique fashion house vibe. Now it's
Hmm.
I'm transitioning the Rose House from a boutique to more so like um fashion house that will have like collections coming out.
Hmm.
Just more streamlined.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than like treasure shop vibes. However, if we ever had like a brick and mortar, it would be a treasure shop. But yes,
Hmm.
social media helped that so much because in the pandemic, I mean, it was such a powerful tool. It really, really was.
Yep.
And just, it really does forward and further connectivity amongst
Yep.
artists. So I believe in it greatly.
And Will, what about you? So for you're someone who, you of course, work for the wonderful MTCA, but you have your also, this is empty space. I just said it wrong there, right? This is
This
empty.
empty space.
This empty
Empty
space.
space.
This empty space.
It's a Peter Brook
The
nod.
empty space. This empty
This
space. I
empty
got
space.
it.
But it's empty.
Um,
Musical theater. Hey. Yeah.
But and of course, and your own songwriting career. And I've seen
Yeah.
you on the TikToks, beautifully doing
Yeah.
fun ticks and talks. They're very great. How has that experience been for you? Is that something that's it's a struggle for you? Is it something that comes kind of naturally? How has that been?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Hannah absolutely hit the nail on the head that it is a tool. It is absolutely a tool. And I think for artists, I think we have to remember that. I mean, if I were not an artist, I don't think I would have much of a relationship with social media. I don't think. I just think I would be exhausted by it, and really, it would not interest me. But I think I feel like we are slightly beholden, because if you had told artists of 100 years ago, 50 years ago, that there would be a tool that you could
Mm-hmm.
reach tens of thousands, perhaps millions of people for free. I mean, there
Yeah.
is a bit of like a real win there, and I think any
Mm-hmm.
artist from the past would be like, oh my god, sign me up. How do I do that? All of our whole journey has been like, hey, where is my audience? Who can hear me? Please listen. And
Mm-hmm.
we in the past, it's been all about gatekeepers and people who are getting in front of the people who could get you in front of people. But now you
Mm-hmm.
can do it yourself. But now the real difficulty is like actually doing that work and being willing to be very, very vulnerable in that space. And so I
Mm-hmm.
find that it is a tool, and to create more than you consume. That if you are a creator on there, do not get lost in the scroll, but you are there, you are showing up on that app not to consume but to create. And
Mm-hmm.
it's a reminder I have to tell myself all the time,
Amen.
because those things are built for us to get lost in.
Yes.
So just remember that if you are an artist, that you have a real tool at your advantage that's different than someone who uses it to entertain themselves, to keep up with friends and family. Like, that's amazing too, but this really is a platform. This is your artistic home and platform, and you decide the rules and you decide what goes on that stage. But use it. I mean, gosh, I just can't imagine, if you, again, those artists, if you told Shakespeare, I think he would have absolutely been
Mm-hmm.
on social media.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you're so good at it,
I think
Will. You're so amazingly
Oh
gifted.
God.
Yeah.
I
you
need to be
really
more
are.
consistent, though, for sure, because I'll
Yeah, that
come
was
and
the
go.
note I was going to give you. I'm glad you
Yeah.
gave it yourself, so I didn't have to say that. But I was
Thank
more
you so
consistent for
much.
sure.
I will take
No,
note. Thank
I
you
do think that note of like create more than you
Yeah.
consume is like a great rule for life.
yeah.
Like, yes, for social media, but also like for my mental health. It's a note I've given myself exactly of like how much consumption versus creation have I
Yes.
done?
Absolutely.
Or sometimes if in the work that I'm doing, am I doing more like assimilation of information versus what am I actually creatively outputting in the world? And I find myself so much happier when, even if it's not specifically writing something, or sometimes it's creative pursuit like designing curriculum or something, but something that's got some kind of creative
Yeah.
aspect to it. Part of wanting to start the podcast was like, this gets to be a creative outlet for me in a way that like not everything that you do administratively in your job is.
Yeah.
And I feel like that is, if you spend your day sort of administrating and then you watch television and then you scroll through social media and it's all consumption, it puts you in a really unhealthy mental
Absolutely.
place.
It really does.
Yeah, and I think of, you know, when I first started, really when I moved to the city and was really starting to write and create shows and really have like started to build a body of work, the only way to get it in front of people was to have a concert or to you know to invest money, invest a lot of time, find space around your job, you know, to it was a lot to it felt like moving a mountain to get your work heard in the world, you know, to try to get on stage at Rockwood, to try to get, you know, on a, you know, there were a few platforms, you know, I remember concerts like cutting edge composers was a concert series. Scott Allen, the composer, had his Monday nights New Voices, and you know, I did all, you're kind of like on this circuit of like places where, you know, you can show up, like Birdland, you know, and what Jim Caruso does on Monday nights there, you know, like that was kind of the only way to show up in front of people. And now we do have this personal stage that it just seems like, gosh, like why not use it and find a way to use it that feels good for you, and don't do it like anybody else, because also if you're doing it like somebody else, then like, you know, you're kind of doing it wrong. Like show up like you.
All right. Well, you can use this specific stage now to finally brag about Radioactive.
Oh,
Tell us, you're trying to do it in the game. You're trying to sneak in and force it, but I'll let you do it now. Tell us a little bit about Radioactive and what's upcoming with that. I know this maybe a couple weeks ago that we saw that really blasted over social media, this amazing video of Hannah singing Getting Closer, I believe it was called.
That's right. Yeah. So we have a single out from the show Radioactive, sung, of course, by the magnificent Hannah Corneau. It is such a gift to have her on this and to collaborate on this piece with her. And yeah, the show is about Marie Curie, who discovered the element radium. She was the first woman to win a Nobel Prize. She won 2 of them. And she fled from Poland to Paris to pursue science in a time when in Poland, it was literally the Russians had invaded Poland, and it was outlawed for science to be studied, for women to be in school. So she fled to Paris. She was one of only a handful of women at the Sorbonne. She had this vision and belief that there were powers and elements beyond what we could see, and she was laughed out of every room about that. And it took 7 years, but after 7 years of sweat and toil and breaking down this crazy rock called pitchblende, she and her collaborator Pierre Curie, who would later become her husband, discovered the first invisible element of radium and brought it into the world. And it's a story about collaboration, and it's a story about 2 minds coming together that also become 2 hearts coming together to find invisible things. And radium is, and the reason why it's a musical is that radium is invisible, love is invisible, and music is invisible. And we use all these elements to tell this story. And so the song is out, and the song Getting Closer is like a 2-minute bullet train where Marie is trying to tell Pierre she does not have time for love. She doesn't have time for a relationship. She is hell-bent on her pursuits as a scientist, and she's getting so close. But she's also getting closer to Pierre, and so she's kind of caught. And so the song is out on Spotify and Apple Music, all the things. The video is on YouTube and all those things. And you can buy the sheet music on reynoldsandprice.com. And we just would love for you to check out the tune, because Hannah is extraordinary. And Charlie Rosen did an outrageously magnificent orchestration. Charlie, who just won a Grammy and was Tony nominated this past season. He's a rock star for Strange Loop.
We will have it in our show notes, the link to exactly this.
Great.
Anna, do you think it's okay that I'm not making fun of Will for trying to hit collaboration again in the show? Because he said it very beautifully.
Yes, he did.
So we think we can
let it slide. Yeah. We can let it slide.
Yeah, I think we should. Well, to both of you, thank you so much for the time. This was such a pleasure to get to do this.
Thank you so much for having us.
Same.
And thank you, Will, for creating.
Oh boy, I hope you enjoyed that episode. I had a blast recording it. Will, of course, I've known for years, so not at all surprised by his charm and easy banter, as well as his soulful intelligence. But Hannah was a new friend to me, and I just really enjoyed her energy. She was smart and deep, and I think really fun to talk to. As always, so much that we could do a deeper dive into. I have so many more thoughts on collaboration in different forms as an individual artist, and maybe we'll get into that with some more guests on future episodes. I also really liked Will's theme of not gripping too tightly to an initial idea, whether that's in the college process or in the rehearsal room, but I also thought he articulated it so well that I don't necessarily have a ton to add to it today. So really, I'm just going to do a short expansion on this idea of like collaboration versus competition that I brought up at one point. Hannah, I think, pretty quickly said competition has no place in the collaborative rehearsal room. And of course, I could not agree more, right? Those 2 ideas are antithetical, right? They're naturally at odds. Are we working toward a higher purpose, or are we tearing each other down, right? However, the reason I brought it up is I think that there are very few rooms where that energy exists at like 0%. And I'll even say, even the wonderful Charlie Murphy, your podcast host, who is, I think, a pretty like heady, kumbaya kind of person. And I strongly believe in the importance of like team play and collaboration and selflessness and putting, the play above myself. I often still find it hard to keep that competitive energy 100% out of the room. And maybe it's worth sort of defining what I mean by competitive energy, because I don't necessarily mean combative energy, right? Most people, if you're talking about a professional rehearsal room, are not coming in like directly oppositional, right? Maybe in high school theater, it could literally be that, like where, the girl who didn't get the lead is like directly jealous and hiding it poorly. But in professional sense, I think it might be more about kind of finding that line of, am I showing off or am I lifting up my castmates, right? And showing off could be as simple as, it doesn't necessarily mean like obviously showing off. It could be like, asking for a laugh or maybe adding a flourish to a moment that's more because it makes you look good than because it serves the story. Not that asking for a laugh or a flourish is always a bad thing, right? It's an incredibly tricky line because sometimes those are really excellent additions to a show, and it takes a high level of taste to understand where and when you can experiment with some of that versus when am I taking up too much space, right? Or am I actually being too timid, right? Where can my boldness actually serve the room, and where is it more about, I got to keep this thing moving, right? Of course, I'm going to make a basketball analogy here because how can I not? In basketball, this conversation often revolves around like how many shots someone takes. So, sometimes, especially if you have a lot of stars on a team, people can get pouty if they aren't getting enough shots. Maybe that's the equivalent in the theater world of like if you don't have enough lines, right? And it can be kind of tough to share the ball. Often there's a ton of value in role players who play really hard defense and shoot rarely, allowing the stars on their team to really flourish. But the flip side of that is that there's a real downside if you're not willing and able to shoot the ball when the ball is passed to you. Now, in that case, the other team's going to stop defending you and actually makes it much harder for the stars to find space. So you're actually not lifting your teammates up by being selfless. If anything, you're making it harder on your teammates. And of course, in the end, the most important thing as a team in that kind of objective sport like basketball is that the ball goes in the net, right? It shouldn't actually matter who scores it. You want as many times the ball to go in the net as possible for your team, right? But we're all human and we all have some level of ego. And it takes a real self-awareness to know, am I shooting too much for my role or am I actually not shooting enough? And hopefully the coach, or in the theater, this would be like the director, is going to set the tone of what like a good shot is from various members of the team or the ensemble. I really say all this not so much for some direct advice about it, but just to kind of validate the difficulty of this if anyone experiences it coming out of a theater program. It was really surprising to me, coming from a place of like, everybody's an equal, we all have an equal say in the room, sort of regardless of what you're playing in the show. You sort of felt like, well, we're all equals, we're all in the same position. And then you walk into a professional setting and it can be a really tricky thing of like, how much do I own my own space? How much do I bring my genius and my gift loudly into the room versus, when do I kind of pick my spot and find my moment? It's hard. And I just want to also kind of validate, like, you're not a bad person for wanting to shine, for wanting to have that moment where you go, the director remembered me, even though I was an ensemble member and I had 4 lines, but man, I nailed those 4 lines, right? That energy, even though it is to some extent a competitive energy, or it's a self-competitive energy, it's going, I want to crush it. I want to really do a good job with my part. In some ways, to what we're talking about with Hannah, it is a little antithetical to the spirit of what you're trying to do of just serving the room and serving what's going on, but it's also like completely human and totally natural. So, all of this takes a little bit of conscientiousness, takes a little bit of taste and experience to figure out, how best to do this and when do I shine my light and when do I just keep, shining it on someone else, maybe as opposed to letting it shine center stage. Okay, that's enough of that takeaway. If you yourself want to listen to more of these kind of episodes, why don't you hit that subscribe button? You could also rate us, review us. We think that's great. If you, like Hannah, think I ask excellent questions, put it right there in the review. It's great. You can also follow me on social media. I promise a vacation post will be coming. Maybe not while I'm on the vacation, but afterward. We'll take some nice pics, you know? You can also follow MTCA and check us out at mtca.nyc if you want some individual prep for your college process. To my young artists out there mapping their journeys, fly by the seat of wherever you're from pants. And will you play us out on your own episode? We'll see you next week.